Tarry here, where the stories never grow old, and you hear something new every time they are told, and it comes clear. So tarry here, where it doesn't matter your age, and when we gather round the table, we all take the stage year after year. So tarry here, where
Welcome to the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org. I'm Fanny Crawford.
And I'm Stash Zielkowski.
We're your storytelling co-hosts, and we're glad you're with us today. Our theme is Animal Folk and Jack Tales. Today is Monday, July 20th. It's approximately 12 noon.
Wow.
We're looking forward to sharing some great stories with you and some storytelling world news and announcements, I guess. So I hear you shuffling papers, Stash. Is that because you're getting ready to share some announcements with us?
I wanted to make sure I had them. And
Okay.
I wanted to make sure I had the ones I wanted to actually use. So I'll stop shuffling now. So you know what? A thought just occurred to me. We've been doing this for so long. This is just off the top of my head. I thought maybe we should change our introduction to just Fanny and Stash.
Because?
Instead of our full names.
Okay.
If somebody doesn't know who we are by now, who cares? I mean, you know.
Well, we probably should.
Hey, think about it.
Okay. I will think about it.
Okay. So how about telling me a little bit about your weekend, because I know you went to a marvelous workshop.
I did a Zoom workshop led by Andy Offit-Irwin, coordinated by Susan Gordon, and populated by me, Marsha Wong, Beth Olson, Solveig Eggerts, and Jane Dorfman. And
wow.
Each of them had just the most incredible stories. I was blown away, like really knocked out of my seat by a couple of them. But all of them, real diversity of genres, diversity of emotional content, historical content.
Wow.
And of course, Andy is so much fun to be with. And as far as commentary and guidance, we had some great arguments. That was fun too.
Wow.
Because of the diversity of opinions. Costuming.
Oh, okay.
Storyteller costuming, storyteller props, timing, endings.
Yeah.
Level of detail.
I have to tell you, I thought about you guys each day, and that group is a marvelous group. And of course, not having any male in the room made a difference there. I'm sure.
What? Say that again.
I have only ever missed one of Andy's workshops in about 5 years.
Oh, you're saying from Andy's perspective, not having another male in the room.
Well, and possibly for the brilliance of the workshop, the way it sounds. You know.
Well, I did think about that a couple times.
I'm thinking maybe not having any,
support? Gender support?
I was thinking of testosterone.
Oh, there's plenty of testosterone in the room. Those women, we have our share.
Okay.
That's just a scientific fact, and you can see it in the room when we're there.
Wow.
You don't
There goes my theory. I'm going to go back to thinking about Bear Rabbit. My goodness.
You are so funny. Okay.
But anyway, that group. If you said who are 6 people you think would make a really good group, 6 women, I think I would have picked them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would have been really hard for me to not be there because it's just sacred space, and I really need sacred space these days. So it was fun, it was uplifting, it was enlightening, it was thought-provoking. I learned a lot, and helpful to me on specific stories that I'm working on too. So good for me all around.
Well, I was fascinated to get your message that you sent sometime in the middle of the night.
I was going to say in the middle of the night.
I didn't get it in the middle of the night because
I know. That's the only reason I sent it, was that I knew you take precautions from Fanny texting you at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, well, but anyway, I was surprised because I thought I was just surprised. I guess I'm just out of the loop.
Surprised that I went to the workshop, that I did the workshop, or surprised that I texted
No, you told me that last week you were going to go.
Yeah.
But I was surprised at the time signal on the
So
message.
that was related to the intersection of a 2-day workshop with that crowd and the need to honor my commitment to this radio show, and recognizing that the story that I had been working on all weekend was not going to work for the radio show because I'd already told it very recently. And I hadn't made enough significant changes to, so it's a much better story from having been workshopped, but it's not a different story. It's just a slightly deeper story, and I didn't want to tell it again so close to the last time. So I will tell it again on air, but it won't be for a few months probably as I continue to work on it.
All right. So shall we have an announcement about what's coming up?
Sure.
All right, because we're past July's performance for Speak. August the 11th, which is a Tuesday, coming up with Speak Story Series, Adam Booth. And
Yahoo!
Of course, I'm really looking forward to that because Adam, the last time Adam did spoke at Speak. Oh, I like that. The last time Adam spoke at Speak, he said he told wonderful stories, and so I'm looking forward to that again. And the Speak Story series is working hard to make some changes. Specifically, one is being a 501(c), and that process has begun. So
yeah, that's really exciting.
It is
for opportunities.
Yeah. So also the day after Adam Booth will speak, I will be doing a Zoom presentation for the Washington County libraries. I did one in June, I did one in July, and this one, August 12th, is going to be at 11 a.m. in the morning.
Huh.
I'm not sure why they scheduled it for that, because I just am not sure, because the other two were at 7 in the evening. So, that'll be good. It'll be a little different.
My guess is they got feedback from families.
Yeah, I guess.
The ages of the children that I could see on the first one that I sat in on.
Yeah.
Virtually.
So
they were young kids.
You could see the kids.
I could for the first, until Sue, is that her name?
Susan Adams. Susan, yes.
Until she changed the structure, the format.
Right, okay.
I could see people as they came in, either by name or their faces.
Right. Okay, well, good. I see it because I have no idea what the audience looks like, and really don't want to see the audience. In real life, I do, but on this, I think it's the structure is so interesting to me that if I saw a group of kids, like they might do in real life, head turned sideways, or picking stuff off the floor, or like whatever else they do, showing disinterest, it would be difficult. To me, anyway, it's difficult enough to maintain that posture and everything all alone in my kitchen.
I wouldn't assume that because they're picking lint off the floor or picking their noses or turning around backwards that they're not listening. Kids are sponges, remember.
Well, that's true, except that, that I am just like, remember that thing? I know you've heard Andy do this when we've been in a workshop and all of a sudden he'll say, squirrel!
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm very much like that. If I walk from here, from my office, to go to the front room to do something, to say something to my wife, I'm past the kitchen. I may have to stop and do 2 or 3 chores, and then when I get into the living room, I might realize I was in the office working. I wonder what I'm doing here. It's just like
I don't even make it to the living room. I get, I completely lose my.
You can get get distracted locally.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, I walk a lot, do exercise walking with my daughter Rachel, and our joke, between us, is that I'm constant. Instead of squirrel, mine is iris or forsythia, or I'm constantly interrupting our conversations because I see a nice flower. And I forget what we're talking about. She forgets what she was talking about because I'm pointing out flowering trees.
We should clear that up for the radio audience, though. None of your flowers are dashing by like a squirrel.
Right? They feel that way to me.
Oh, okay.
And they're not my flowers. They're all the neighbors' flowers and out in the community.
All right. So, are you ready with a story?
I am. In fact, I have 2 stories today, but we might not have time for both of them.
Well, that's good, because I just have one basic one, maybe.
Okay.
And mine's... Anyway, let's hear your story.
All right, I will start my story. This is called The Marriage of a Mouse, and I'll tell you where it came from after I tell the story.
Oh, okay.
Once there was born a strikingly beautiful mouse child with a strikingly beautiful demeanor and character. As he grew, everyone who met him commented upon his handsome face, his plentiful whiskers, his long, smooth, and elegant tail, and his shiny, glistening, silvery coat, bright and startling as the Milky Way. But even more, those who became acquainted with the child knew him as a fine and hard-working son, with a good disposition, respect for his elders, and kindness to all around him. The mouse child's parents often asked themselves, where will we ever find a wife for our son to match him in gifts, the gifts of beauty, disposition, and goodness? When the time finally came for them to find a suitable wife, they decided that only in God's own family would they find all the virtues worthy of this match. As was the custom in those days, 3 elders of the mouse family were asked to visit God, to ask for a wife for the handsome, beloved son. The elders went to God's home and stood before it, waiting. "Why are you standing at the door?" said God, the traditional invitation to enter the house. They entered and said, "We're sent by the family of the beautiful, hardworking, kind-hearted mouse child. We're looking for a wife worthy of him. Only your family can provide such a wife, for you are the greatest and strongest in the world." God smiled benevolently at the messengers and thought for a moment. "Well, now, that is a good thought, and it is true that the mouse child should have the right wife. But alas, you've come to the wrong house, for in truth there is a family stronger than ours. It is the family of the wind." "Oh," said the messengers, "are you not stronger than the winds?" "You might think so, but look about you. When the winds blow, they cover the earth with dust. The dust even blows into my eyes. Even you can see the winds are stronger. The messengers talked among themselves and agreed. It was clear only a wife from the family of the wind would be worthy of the mouse child. So they said to God, "Very well, where can we find the house of the wind?" And God smiled and pointed out the house of the wind, and they went there. When they arrived, they stood before the house, and the wind asked, "Why are you standing at the door?" And so invited, the mouse elders stepped through the doorway and answered, "We're looking for a wife for the beautiful, hardworking, and kind-hearted mouse child. We went to God's house, but God said the wind is stronger. So we've come to ask for a daughter of this house to be the wife of our child." The wind listened and thought and said, "Your idea is a good one, and I thank you. But you see that this family is not the strongest. When we blow with all our strength, we can raise the dust of the earth and even uproot trees. But against the mountain, we can do nothing. We blow and blow, but the mountain does not move." The messengers talked among themselves and agreed only a wife from the family of the mountain would be worthy of the mouse child. They asked, "Where can we find the house of the mountain?" The wind pointed out the house. The messengers thanked the wind and left. When they came to Mountain's place, they stood there till the mountain said, "Why are you standing at the door?" Then they entered, and Mountain asked politely, "How are you? Have you brought good news? How are your children? How are your cattle?" And when they had answered politely in return, they spoke of the beautiful, hardworking, kind-hearted mouse child and his need of a wife. The mountain listened thoughtfully and said, "Yes, it is right that such a child should have the best wife, but she will not come from my family. There is another who is stronger. He digs at my foundation day and night. He makes holes in my sides and causes me to crumble in many places. That one is the most powerful." "Ah," said the elders, "where can we find this family?" The mountain pointed out the house, and the messengers went there. It was the home of a mouse. "Why do you stand at the door?" the mouse asked. Once again, the elders explained their mission. The mouse listened and said, "Ah, it is good. You have found a wife for your child. What a joy that our most exceptional family should be united." And so it was that the beautiful, hardworking, kind-hearted mouse wed a wife who was worthy.
Wow. I never heard that. Did you write that?
No, I did not write that. I adapted it slightly, but it's from a book called African Folktales, edited by Charlotte and Wolf Leslau, from Peter Pauper Press, 1963. But it's a reprint. That book gives credit to a book of Ethiopian stories called Fire on the Mountain. That's an even older book. There's no date given, so I don't know how old it is. But I just love that story.
Ooh. Well, I like it. But
Are you troubled?
oh yes,
You look troubled.
I do look troubled. It reminds. Every once in a while, I hear someone tell a story, and and it reminds me of a job I had early on. In Frederick, I went to a school and did a performance for a couple of different grades. And then I was hired again at the same school for a special program for readers. And these were children who had done something special in their reading. I don't know if it was read X number of books or, wrote stuff about the books. Anyway, these were exceptional readers, and they were being given an evening treat. And I was part of the treat, telling stories. And
you are a treat, Stash.
Yes, well, and so they had a ceremony, and then they had like what's the old word is soiree?
Yes.
Not dancing, but they were partying sort of, and then it was me, and then they were going to go back and do something else. So I was like the third step on this celebration, and it was evening time. And I had, first of all, I lit my storytelling lamp, and right away I was told by 16 kids, you can't have a match, you can't light a candle in here because it's a fire code and all this stuff. So, well, I truly believe the teacher in charge was going to forgive that. But the kids weren't. So then, so I launched into my stories, and at each one, there was at least one person that stands up my mind, pretty much right in front of me, who paid close attention. I think he was practicing lip reading or something, because his arm was constantly shooting up and saying, "That doesn't make sense."
That kid has been in so many classrooms with me.
I know. It's almost like he's a spirit of some kind.
Yes.
So the spirit of aggravating storytelling. Anyway, as soon as I heard the first part, where the mice were going to the house of God, they got advice on a wife. I thought of that kid. It just popped right in my mind.
That child would have had something to say about that.
Oh, yeah.
So what would that child have said, Stash?
Well, I said, depending on his religious background, nothing is greater than God, and God wouldn't say that, and God would just say, thank you, but you have to do that on your own. I gave you enough brains to figure it out. Goodbye. And, or something like that. Anyway. And even the ending kind of surprised me. I was expecting the river.
Oh.
The ocean. I was thinking like a kid, and I was thinking, this reminds me of course, the mountains are worn down by this. And actually, mountains are, here's the science stuff in my brain. I can't get rid of it. The wind does wear down the mountains.
Yes.
So anyway, I have a hard time sometimes getting rid of my education and being a child.
Disbelief.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so what I love about this story is that to me it's about perspective.
Yeah.
It's not about fact. It's about perspective.
Right.
So I argued with the story myself the first time I read it all the way through. And but the ending was a surprise to me also. I kind of, by the time we got to the mountain, I began to suspect what was going to happen. But still, I just love the unexpectedness of it.
Yeah. In 1,000 years of stories, I would never have guessed that the mouse was the end. The mouse family. I just... If you had stopped and said, "Okay, now write the ending," I would have contrived lots of different things, and never would I have gone. A few years ago, my wife and I took a trip to Jonesboro, Tennessee, to the NASA Storytelling Festival. First full weekend of October every year. Not this year. This year it's going to be virtual. But anyway, we went to the community center at Southwest Virginia Community College. And there we saw a marvelous thing. Are you back, Fanny? And here's what I want to tell you about. Imagine walking into a building and seeing the following. On the wall, on a warm, early summer night, 3 figures rest under a tall, spreading tree, recounting stories born from the diverse and culturally rich inheritance each has to offer. A woman, born of Irish, Scots, German pioneer stock, begins her tale. It is almost as old as the hills that surround them. And she's telling to a rabbit. The rabbit is Brer Rabbit from the Uncle Remus tales and represents our region's Black American heritage. The third is one of America's first inhabitants, a Native American. They both sit comfortably and wait to begin their own tales. Behind them, on that wall, rises the bean tree, the storytelling tree, and as the woman spins her tales, the thick, verdant branches fill with images from the multitude of jack tales that are indigenous to the first wave of white pioneer settlers to this region. Populating the tree is a huge giant holding his wooden cudgel, a reference to Jack and the Bean Tree. Further along are the daughters of a witch woman, the first with only one eye, the second possessed of 2 eyes, just like you and me, while the third has 3 eyes. And this is a reference to a Jack story called Jack and the Bull. Beneath them on the wall is a one-eyed beggar. This is Woden, or Odin, wandering in from Nordic and German mythology. And he figures in many Jack tales, always giving, in return for some natural kindness from Jack, just the right gift that eventually sees the youth safely through to the end of that story. A couple of stories that Woden is in is Phil Bowl Phil, Hardy Hardhead, and Jack's Goose. The beggar man is talking to a small mouse. And he's telling the small mouse about young Jack and whether or not he's worth all the trouble they've gone to on his behalf. Above them on the wall, 9 cats scamper across the tree limbs on their way to a haunted mill, a reference to one of my favorite Jack tales, the Sop Doll. Flying past that same limb is a magic boat carrying 7 brothers. Hardy Hardhead, eat well, drink well, run well, hark well, see well, and shoot well. Every one of those brothers is going to help in Jack's rescue of a princess from the clutches of an evil witch. Hardy Hardhead, or Jack in the Flying Boat, is the name of that tale. Below them on the last limb are 3 preachers and 3 dancing girls, stuck fast to the enchanted goose that the Jack figure holds. Their frantic efforts to break free help bring laughter and joy to another young princess's heart, thus winning for Jack her hand in marriage and a happily ever after ending to that tale. And that's from Jack and the Woodchopper. It is early evening as the pioneer woman pauses at the end of her last story. She settles herself, smiles back at her 2 companions, and waits eagerly for them to begin their own stories. The telling lasts far into the night and is going on to this very day. Be still. Listen. Their stories are full of wonder and delight. Now, imagine the wall 50 feet long and 30 feet high. Nothing else is on the wall except thousands and thousands and thousands of bricks. And that wall is constructed in a special artistic way. Some of the bricks stand out from the normal flatness of the wall, and those bricks are standing out in a specific way that the sculptor has designed. And so each of the things I described, the old woman, the Native American woman, and Brer Rabbit, are bas-relief characters that come out of the wall. The bean tree is enormous, going from the floor all the way up near the top, and way up in the air near the top is the figure of the giant with his cudgel in his hand. And it goes on and on and on. This tree inhabited by all these characters. And it's wonderful. My wife and I spent a bit of time there, and I took pictures of it. I have a number of pictures that focus on each of the areas that I just described. And in my upcoming performance in August, which features Jack and the Beanstalk, I'm going to be talking about that wall and describing it. And I have really nice pictures of it, which I'm working on to be able to hold in front of my iPad so that the audience will be able to see what I'm talking about. If someone had told me about the wall, and actually I did read about it before going there, I would have had a hard time envisioning bricks coming out from the wall and being sculpted so that they look like Brer Rabbit. And he's all dressed up, of course, and the old woman is dressed up, and the beggar man who's talking to the mouse. And, anyway, it's a fascinating place. I think it would be a marvelous place for somebody to do storytelling in front of the wall, and with a focus at different points. Anyway,
you gave me some photos of the wall that I still have, and
right.
So I'm familiar with the wall. I do want you to say again for our listeners and for me where the wall is.
The wall is in the Southwest Virginia Community College Community Center. Let's see, someplace I have the name of the town. And I can grab that real quick. Let's see, the name of the town is...
That's okay.
I need to dig for that. I should have had that up already. I thought I had it right in front of me, but I don't. Anyway, it's a little bit off the path to go to the... okay. It's in Richlands, Virginia. Richlands, Virginia is the town, and it just is fascinating. Pardon?
It's in Richlands, Virginia.
Richlands, Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah, Southwest Virginia Community College, and it's really nice. A short drive off the highway, and
yeah, I think the kids, well, everybody in the audience will love having that be part of the program. I
Right.
certainly appreciated the photos that I've heard you talk about it before, but when you gave me photos, that really brought it up.
I'm surprised. I've talked to a number of storytellers who don't know anything about that Jack Wall, and I am always surprised about that. So
I think you were the first person to tell me about it.
yeah, I think it's strange that happens. People say, "Really? I never heard of such a thing." It's like, so. If I didn't have pictures, I would think I had imagined it. So,
well, it's a great strategy for giving an overview of Jack Tales, because you can
right.
give a paragraph or as little as you want, a sentence about each story. That's really
right.
interesting.
And I'm going to do a couple of those stories on the thing.
Yeah, I imagine kids would be fascinated to hear Jack Tales described that way.
I hope so. and since there might be young ones, as you pointed out, seeing the pictures will make it a little bit more fun because that's what they're used to.
Right.
You know. Anyway, I'm finished.
Okay.
You're.
Okay, this is a version of Snow White and Rose Red. There were once two sisters who lived with their mother in a small cottage in the midst of a great forest. Snow White, hair fine as silk, and such a pale blonde color. It was almost white. She was quiet and shy, but she entertained her sister and mother with fanciful stories she related every evening as they worked stringing bean pods from their garden on long strands of twine to dry in the attic for winter soups. Sometimes they sat by the fireplace sewing. Rose Red's dark auburn curly hair bounced in rambunctious ringlets around her face as she listened to the stories. But when there wasn't storytelling, she was always out in the garden or practicing handstands on the front porch. She was outgoing and lively, spending as much time as possible out of doors. Their father died when the girls were very young, and now it was just the three of them in their little family. Their mother worked hard sewing for the townspeople at the edge of the forest and growing much of what the family ate from their small, neat garden. And now that they were no longer young children, Snow White and Rose Red worked hard too, helping with the garden, collecting the mending baskets full of dresses that needed hems let down, work clothes that needed cuffs turned, and carrying the clothing back to the owners once it was all made perfectly new and neat by their mother. The three of them had not much in the world but the small cottage, the well-tended garden, and trade with the townspeople. That was enough for them. Late one icy cold winter night, as the chimney of the cottage puffed out, small regular puffs of fragrant hardwood smoke from the logs those three hard-working women cut and stored under the house all summer, there came a thumping and knocking on the cottage door. Rose Red ran to open it. There on the porch was an enormous brown bear. Rose Red, was a bit put off by the sight of a bear on their front porch, but the bear explained he had traveled a great distance over several days and nights and wanted only a place by the warm fire out of the wind and sleet. Rose Red explained the bear's request to Snow White and their mother. After proper introductions, they invited the bear in. He lay his great bulk down in front of the fire. Rose Red found an old coat, an old blanket, to rub the water and sleet from his heavy coat. Snow White told her newest story about elves lost in the snow, and then they all settled down to sleep. In the morning, the bear was eager to be on his way, but the sisters begged him to stay for breakfast. He did, but politely ate only one small bowl of homegrown oatmeal, same as everyone else. The last they saw of the bear that day was his broad brown rump bounding down the path into the forest. But late that night, there came a thumping and a knocking on the cottage door. Rose Red ran to open it, and there again was that same enormous brown bear headed home from his travels and bearing a great basket of nuts, honey, and cheese, the bear's favorite foods, to thank them for their kind hospitality. He lay down by the fire, one leg dry this time, pressed almost on top of Rose Red's foot. Snow White provided another elf tale, and they all settled down to sleep. In the morning, there was a bowl of oatmeal for each of them, this time with nuts, honey, and cheese. And the last they saw of the bear that day was his broad brown rump disappearing into the forest. But he came back late that night, and the night after, and the night after that. He returned every night that winter, usually with fine food and drink for breakfast, and then went off again every morning to do whatever it is a bear will do on his own in the great forest. Spring arrived, and then summer. The bear explained he would be leaving them. Summer is the season for greedy and malicious green trolls to be abroad, waked from their winter hibernation and casting about for other people's valuables and treasure to steal. The bear said he had not very much in the way of valuables or treasure. But what he had he wished to keep safe. And that very morning he was off, trundling down the path. For a frightened, blustering green troll, his long, wispy, goat-like beard caught in the cracked cleft of a tree. They could hear him wailing and shouting angry words they had never heard before and did not know the meanings of, shouting at the tree as he beat upon it with a stout walking stick, cracking the stick, but without much luck in freeing his beard. Together, Snow White and Rose Red managed to pull apart the cleft in the tree just enough to pull the troll free. They got no thanks for their trouble. In fact, the troll gave them each a smack on the head for pulling his beard and a kick to each of their shins for leaving a bit of his beard in the crack. A few weeks later, hunting for truffles, they came upon the same troll. They recognized his worse-for-wear wispy beard, his angry wails and creative curses. This time he was twisted up in a patch of blackberry brambles, his jacket caught all which ways, arms crisscrossed so that he could not even reach the buttons to wiggle out of the sleeves. This time, fortunately for the troll, Snow White was carrying a small truffle knife in her basket. And together the two girls were able to cut him out of the jacket. The troll was, if anything, even angrier than last time, accusing them of intentionally losing his buttons in the brambles and destroying his tailored suit. He gave them each a push hard into the brambles as he ran off, and it was more than an hour and many, many painfully trimmed brambles later before they were able to detach themselves. Their third meeting, almost a month later, was right upon the path. The troll came barreling round a blind corner at top speed, fast enough to knock the wind out of Snow White as he slammed into her middle section with his head, watching the ground below him rather than ahead of him as he ran. Snow White and Rose Red sat down abruptly in the middle of the path as the troll tripped over both of them, shouting his favorite words as he rolled over and over, trying to right himself. Really, they were quite a tangle of short troll legs, bugged-out angry troll eyes, longer girl legs, and lots of tousled girl hair. So they were a bit distracted. Troll and girls jumped about a foot as a massive mountain of brown fur came roaring, jaws agape, around the turning in the path. The green troll began shrieking, screaming his words. Eat them! Eat them! They have your jewels in their baskets! As he removed his now empty hands from the inside of the truffle baskets. They are the culprits! Thief! Thief! Snow White and Rose Red cowered in fear, not at all sure they recognized the brown-furred raging animal now towering over them, fangs parted, his hot breath visible in the cool forest air, only a few feet from their faces. The bear dropped down on 3 feet with his right front paw and extraordinary supernatural strength. He swept the troll high into the air, catapulting the fiend over trees, over the closest craggy peak, and beyond, far, far out beyond the edge of the forest. The troll was now too far away for Snow White and Rose Red to hear his shrieking. But the bear's hearing was better than theirs, and he rumbled a low, self-satisfied rumble. Snow White and Rose Red stared at him, wide-eyed. 1 minute, he was an enormous, wild, fur-bound warrior. The next instant, he was a sweating, chainmail-wearing prince, fashionably shod in tall leather boots, capped with a leather helmet, the chin strap dangling loosely below his right ear, and bearing a broad steel sword by its bejeweled hilt. The troll, one of the last of its kind, possessed of stolen amulets and magical curses, had lusted for the prince's treasure and conspired with a wicked wizard he later roasted and ate to put a spell upon the prince, steal his riches, and shape-shift him to bearish countenance and habits. Caught at long last by the bear, thrown from the forest, the seat of the wizards and the troll's stolen power, the troll was helpless. The curse was broken. Rose Red, of course, married the prince. Snow White married his younger brother, and then Rose Red and Snow White, often accompanied by the royals, helped their mother renovate and expand the cottage to hold all of them each summer, and convinced their mother to live with the two couples at the royal palace through each winter. And while they may not have lived completely happily ever after, these living arrangements brought them great joy indeed, as they generously shared love, treasure, and domiciles with those in need.
Wonderful.
Did you get to hear the whole thing?
Almost all.
Okay.
Just a short part.
Okay.
But I love stories about trolls, and I always and it strikes me that Jack is not the only character who has multiple tails,
Right.
and marries multiple times, and spends his entire life as a bachelor in multiple stories.
Yes.
Snow White. I didn't know Snow White could be married to a prince.
There you go.
Before she did all the other things she did.
Well, there's obviously more than one Snow White and Rose Red.
I know, and that could be confusing to a young child. So, I imagine, that storytellers who do a lot with young children probably try not to do the two different Snow White stories on the same day.
Yes, you would think.
I would think, yeah. I think the Jack tales lends themselves more to understand, even for young children, to understand that Jack is not the same Jack every time.
Right.
That he's like, your Uncle Tanoose. I don't know do you remember Uncle Tanoose?
No, but it sounds familiar.
Uncle Tanoose was on the Danny Thomas show.
Oh, yes!
And he was my favorite character on TV for many years.
I remember him very well. He was really the only thing I really loved about that show.
Daniel, let me tell you. he had lots of wisdom and advice, and he got in lots of trouble. But he was very loving and kind. And
what was that actor's name? I remember that. I didn't. I used to know it.
I used to know lots of names too. It'd probably be pretty easy to find out,
Yeah, I think I've read about him online. In fact.
Yeah, he was a really great character. And for a number of years after that show was on, there were comedians who would use some of his sayings spontaneously, and audiences would recognize him right away, because that show was very popular. Danny Thomas show.
Yeah.
It was.
It was on for a long time too.
Yeah, a great guy, Danny Thomas.
Yeah.
Founder of St. Jude's Hospital. I'm sure you know
I knew that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the. I think it's a really great story about an actor, entertainer. The story is that he was down and out and made a promise to God that if God helped him to get going on his career, he would open a hospital, or to St. Jude, I guess he was praying. And I got to know that story because St. Jude was my mother's favorite saint, because he was the saint of the hopeless cases. And my mother prayed to him about me every single day.
hopeless case that you were.
Yes. Well, she thought I was. You know, in lots of ways, I think, which is okay. You know, I did my best. I
And
think,
you turned out pretty good after all.
yeah. All right. Thanks. I appreciate that. So I think we have killed another hour.
Almost, but you know,
Almost.
well, first of all, I have to tell you about Andy Alfred Irwin and Terry here. I have
Yes.
shocking news. Just shocking news.
We have to pay to use it.
Not quite that shocking.
No.
That would be shocking. But of course, I was with Andy virtually over the weekend for about 12 plus hours. And I forgot at the beginning of the show to thank Andy for
Yes.
allowing us to use
Right.
Terry here as our opening for the show, which doesn't bode well for what's going to happen as a result of shocking news. But perhaps he will forgive that lapse.
Right.
But he told us yesterday, I think it was yesterday, at the workshop, that Sheila Arnold has asked permission and received permission from Andy to use Terry here as the theme for her storytelling series that she does virtually.
Wow.
And she's doing so many sessions, maybe
Right.
more, I mean, maybe possibly more than anybody else, except maybe the NSN in Jonesboro. So immediately when he announced, and it was just, he was like a throwaway comment. He just we were talking about Sheila and the wonderful virtual events that she's putting on and the number of storytellers that are benefiting from that. And he just mentioned that he had just been talking to her and that she had asked to use the theme, to use Harry here as the theme. So I immediately piped up and said, well then, Andy, you are going to have to write a new song for us to use on the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour. And he kind of blustered and hemmed and hawed for a minute. I think he had completely forgotten that we were doing that he had given us permission, because the last time it came up, he had forgotten. So I'm assuming that he forgot it again.
Wow.
And he said, sure. And then 5 minutes later, he said, no, you're going to have to battle Sheila for the theme song. And so we're going to have to talk about that. But I did tell him that I would much rather battle Andy than battle Sheila for the song. So it seems like it would be far easier to get Andy to write us a new song than to get Sheila to cease and desist from using the one we claimed.
Wow. Well, we could always write a new song.
We could, but it would be so much cooler to have Andy write it.
Well, I don't know. Depends.
Depends upon what?
On your philosophy about what's cool.
We're cool.
I don't know.
But
I
having
know.
Andy involved at any level in the radio show is cool. There's no doubt about that.
We could say, and we can put him right into the song.